We're required to send them out to everybody every year. And so once you get that, or once we mail those out, the 45-day window is open. Most of the time, we send it out the last Friday in April, which means about the second Monday in June is that 45-day. If at any point you disagree with the value, and I said that, value of the property, then you should come in, file an appeal. Our staff will look through it, see what changes or what adjustments might need to be made, or if there is an ability to. Most people who actually file an appeal come in because at the bottom of the assessment notice that we send out is an estimate of taxes, and nobody likes what comes out of their pocket. I understand that, and I'll raise my hand too. And so most people come in because they don't like that. And I understand that, and I understand that our value does eventually create a tax bill. But when you're talking to the assessors, remember we are evaluators. So we need to discuss where is the value incorrect, because once we get all the values together is how further down the line budgets, millage rates, things like that that affect the overall tax bills are created. Where we start with, and we're in the beginning process of that each year, where's the value incorrect? And that's where we work with owners of properties, sometimes agents and things like that, to figure out if we're incorrect, and if so, why, and fix it.
Okay. So if someone wants to do some work on their house, make some upgrades to increase the value of their home, what's the question? One, are there resources that folks can tap into that will show them what those improvements could be to improve the valuation of the home? As well as, are those new improvements considered, and how are they considered with the valuation process then?
So I always start with this. When people go in and upkeep their home, and after 20, 25 years, a property needs new roof, might need new windows. That's maintenance and upkeep. We're not going to, while the overall life expectancy of the house, we have usually it's 50, 60 years is the economic life expectancy of a house.
Okay.
And we can make adjustments based on changes that are done to the effective age of that property. So I'll take it to a whole further extent. Let's just say someone went in and completely gut renovated their house, new kitchen, new bath, new everything. That let's say it was built in the 1960s house, is now very comparative to a 2010 or 2015 because it's under current codes, current building materials, and things like that. While the actual age is still 60, we'll adjust that effective age of that property. And so, of course, the value, because the depreciation is changing, because that house is now appearing newer, will make that house have more value. But at the same time, that doesn't want to penalize somebody for going in there and making sure paint's still staying on their house. Gutters are being replaced, windows might need to be replaced, roofs need to be replaced. Those are maintenance and upkeep items. So there's two different things. Renovations get into where you're bringing the house up to current codes and where it should be considered a more newer home. Living in your home and maintaining your home should be that you're just doing that. You're being a good citizen and making your property not an eyesore.
Right. Okay. Good. If we can back up to the taxes you mentioned a moment ago. How are the property taxes actually calculated?
So, and I brought just a little bit, so it's going to be hard to see, but the easiest way to describe it is in the state of Georgia, every property is taxed at 40%. So I'm going to keep math simple if you don't mind for today. You have a $100,000 home. You have a $40,000 assessed value, is what we call that, and that's your taxable value. From that $40,000, if you have a homestead exemption, and the standard in this county of just a regular one is $10,000, it comes off of that $40,000. So now your tax liability is at $30,000, and that's for us, the county maintenance and operation, school maintenance and operation, fire. Municipalities have their own different ones, but at the same time, those are the ones. Once you have that 40% value or the assessed value finalized, the millage rate, which is calculated when my office gets done every year with getting the final assessed value of the county. So we take all the properties, add them all up, and then take 40% of that. This past year was right around 14 billion in assessed value. The finance, the board of commissioners and things like that work on their budget. That budget is divided by the total assessed value, and that becomes a millage rate. Milli meaning 1/1000. And so whatever millage rate is established that year is multiplied times your assessed, your 40% value. And that becomes an estimated tax for each line item. So the county has a millage rate, the school board has a millage rate, the fire has a millage rate, and like I said, each municipality also has a millage rate. And that's times the assessed value that we establish.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the homestead exemption. Would you mind explaining that to those that may not be familiar?
I'll briefly go into the exemption is done through the tax commissioner's office. So also, first of all, want to say that any questions anyone has with the tax exemption, whether they qualify, what exists out there as far as exemptions and different things like that, the tax commissioner's website has a whole column just on that, but they are also great about answering the phone and explaining that, what all is available to you, because there is, once you hit 65, then you are qualified to not pay school taxes. There's veteran exemptions. There's different exemptions out there. So there's got a full list on their website, but these exemptions are things that homesteaded properties. So the house that you live in, reside in, and everything like that, you can't have if you have a second home, you don't get a homestead on that one. You have a rental property, you can't get homestead on that one. You can't get school tax exemptions, any of that stuff. You only get exemptions on your homesteaded property. That's the house you live in, and that's claims where you reside.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that once the taxes are collected, those taxes go to support certain amenities or certain services.
Yes.
Would you mind speaking to that as well? You mentioned school board or school.
So the school board has their own, which, their millage rate, I think this past year was 19.6. And so that money that is collected then goes to their funds that goes through for all the educational purposes that they do throughout the year. Same thing with, you'll see it it's always listed as county M&O, which is maintenance and operation. That goes toward all departments that fall under the county board of commissioners. The fire, that is your fire, EMS, all those great workers that when you call 911 and someone shows up for that right there is what you pay for. And then, like I said, the local municipalities also have their own source of fundings.
Okay. Library included.
Yes, sir. You and I are both in county maintenance and operation.
Absolutely. Now, when someone is selling a home, I'm going to switch gears for a minute. How does your office play a role in the selling of?
Directly, none.
Okay.
Indirectly, so eventually, once you sell a property, and we have what you see of my value listed for on there has no way, shape, form, has no bearing, I guess, on what you can sell your property for. My valuation is actually based off the previous year's sales. A lot of times in an increasing market, I'm behind the times as far as where the current market is. But once you sell that property and that deed then goes and gets through the clerk of superior court, it gets recorded down there. My office gets a copy of that. Usually within about 6 weeks of a transaction, I've got a copy of what's going on. We take that sale information along with, let's say you had 6 others in your neighborhood. And when I say your neighborhood, I'm talking about your subdivision. I'm not talking about a 1 mile area like some of these things do. This is your neighborhood that is platted to your property. Most times in these newer subdivisions where you see the sign that says XYZ neighborhood, and it's just those homes. It's not the homes that are across the street or anything like that. But we take the sales of each of those properties each year and analyze that data based on what we have on that information, because sometimes a property sells and it had a finished basement we didn't know about. At the same time, it sells sometimes, and it had some depreciation on it, some factors that were hurting the value of it that we didn't know about, and we'll make those adjustments accordingly to our values. But indirectly, that's how we then go about establishing market for the next year.
Okay.
But directly, we have nothing to do with selling the property.
Okay, great. I did get some information about a new House bill, House Bill 581.
Yes, sir.
But I do understand it may be wise for folks to go on the tax commissioner's website to get more information about exemptions. But this bill speaks specifically to the homestead exemption and some changes that are coming up for this year. Do you have information about that?
I'll speak a little bit to it on that end and a little bit to it on how it affects my end also. So House Bill 581 is something that's out there and was voted on by the citizens. This is a bill that will, I guess in the best terms and the easiest terms, look at capping what your tax bills for homesteaded properties will be. And there's still a few little ins and outs that language is being cleaned up and all that. But the general gist of it was to be that homesteaded properties, I always go back to that. This is only for properties that have homestead. If your tax bill was this in 2024, and 2024 is going to be your base year value for everybody who had a homestead exemption, then going forward, there is a inflation factor that will be set by the revenue commissioner of the state each year, that your bill could only go up X amount per year based on that, no matter what the value of it on my end does. So that's the general gist of that part and the tax commissioner is going to be putting a lot of information out coming up. Matter of fact, I think she and I might tag along on next week's Board of Commissioners meeting, have a little bit of a presentation about this too. The biggest thing that you're going to see on my end, and really what I want to talk about, is when you get the notice of assessment, and I know, like I said, everyone can't see it, but the notice of assessment that we used to send out at the very bottom, I told you earlier, has an estimate of taxes at the end of it every year. That goes away. By law, Georgia the Gold Dome has decided that we no longer need to do the estimate of taxes, which our office is only for valuation, so that makes sense. But instead of making that whole section go away, they've got a new thing that they're going to have where they're going to have to we're going to have an estimated rollback millage rate. And that right there in and of itself defined is what is going to be my charge over the next few months to get that definition better out. And when we send out notices of assessments, it's going to have a supplement in there with all these definitions. But in simplest terms, and I have to actually have it sometimes written down myself to make sure I get it exactly right. A rollback millage rate is basically the rate that will produce the same revenue on the current digest as to the last year's rate would have produced with no reassessment. Now, reassessment means, and I know it's a little confusing, that's my easiest definition. So reassessment is market adjustments every year. So if your property goes up in value because all your neighbors have gone up and we've looked at the market and all that, growth is the other part of reassessment. Growth is where you've added to your property by additions, things that add value based on that, anything other than outside influences, say, of market. So it looks at basically what last year's overall digest was. And when I say digest, that's all the values we create, and what this year, and it looks at last year's rate. And then it tries to see can you still make the amount of money on last year's millage rate work for this one. Is about as easy as I can make this. It is very
clear as mud.
It's clear as mud. It is clear as mud. And so that's where we get into an estimate. So this is when it goes out, it's going to be an estimate because we don't have the final numbers until well after the appeal season's over.
Right.
So the next thing that's going to happen is, let's just say that the Board of Commissioners and Finance and all that, we don't go back to the estimated rollback millage rate. When the tax bill goes out in September, it's going to have a comment on there that due to this and that the estimated rollback couldn't, or it will say that the estimated rollback millage rate did happen, and that's what everything was based on. But going forward, you will not have an estimate of taxes on your notice of assessment going out. And that's where it's going to be confusing to everybody because since 2009, they're used to seeing that. That was when it was created that had to go on there. So where I'm starting with this group right here and many others to come is letting you know that estimate is not going to be there anymore. It's going to just be an estimated rollback millage. What does that mean to you? It's really hard to say, but that millage rate will eventually be what your tax bill, what your values times by to make the tax bill, but you won't have any of that information. Now you can do some simple math and see, what it is and do it on your own, but there will not be an estimated taxes going forward on the assessment notices. And that's kind of a big deal because everyone's used to that. And that's why they come into my office every year and say they want to appeal.
I'm sure. And I do hope that you and your staff are preparing for long lines of folks who may come in with.
Well, like I said, besides this today and any other chance I get to speak, going out with the notice of assessment, there will be a lot of this definition, a lot of different things explaining. This is not every county in Georgia. There's 159 of us that are going to be doing the same thing, trying to explain estimated rollback millage rates this year.
Wow. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
New words.
Yeah, if you see my eyebrows furrow, and I'm sure there are others in the audience who have the same reaction, but
there's 159 chief appraisers that are doing that too, I promise you.
Boy, glad I'm not feeling alone. Are there any other related programs or services that our homeowners can take advantage of in the county?
I always tell people this, community development is really good about a couple times a year putting out different things for not just new home buyers, but homeowners seminars or things like that. The county does a real good job through communications, letting everybody know when those are happening. A lot of our commissioners have now started doing their own monthly get-togethers, and a lot of times they'll have and even if it says new home ownership meeting, I would suggest those who have been homeowners for 50 years still go, because there's going to be some things that they talk about that affect whether or not you're brand new to it or you've been on a home for 50 years. They're going to talk about different things because there's people that every year we get, they've owned their property their whole life and still couldn't tell you how the taxes are done. And so it's never can hurt to go, even though it may say a new home ownership, that the commissioners, I've seen them in a couple districts here having them over the last few months. It could not hurt to attend any of those, no matter what stage of ownership you are.
Okay. Are there programs or thoughts of having programs to entice more citizens to become homeowners?
I know there are, at the federal and the funding levels, there are, of course, first-time home buyer programs and things like that to help with down payment assistance and different programs like that. As far as right now, currently, I cannot think of one locally, but at the same time, I always look to if people start looking at what they're paying in rent versus what a mortgage is and different things like that, that ought to be some kind of incentive to get started.
Sure.
On that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, I don't have any additional questions. Is there any additional information you would like to leave our community with before we leave?
Realistically, no, I was able to see the main reason for wanting to talk today was about my part of House Bill 581. The other thing I did not mention about that, and I apologize, I just realized, back in 2009, it was Senate Bill 346 created where we had to put that estimated taxes on there. It also created where a match sale law, as we called it. And so if you bought your property for $200,000 this year, next year, if I had it for above that 200,000 for 1 year, I had to give you that 200,000. So let's say I would have had it 225, I would have had to match that sale for 1 year. This new House bill that came about, 581, has eliminated Senate Bill 346. So there is no match sale anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't be looking at things. I'm just letting you know that the what used to be, required for us to match a sale is no longer there.
Okay.
So that was part of, I just kind of realized I omitted part of House Bill 581 that affects the tax assessors.
Got it.
But that's it on that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Kim, do we have any questions?
There was one question that came in earlier. If a person lives in Forest Park, but also Clayton County, do they apply for the homestead for Forest Park and Clayton County?
My understanding, and I always say this, always check with your local municipality just to make sure. But from my understanding, right now, all municipalities, if you have homestead at the county level, then they basically automatically accept it at their level. But that being said, always double check with the city just to make sure. I think that's the case with all of them. I cannot think of one that does offer homestead that doesn't just say, okay, you've already qualified through the county, so now you get it at the city level. But always do your due diligence on that.
Thank you. Any questions in the audience? We've got quite a few.
All right, don't hesitate.
Yes, thank you. The county, and you have to forgive me, I don't know the correct name, the new blight tax that's been implemented.
Yes.
How, is that through your office or?
No, sir, that is through code enforcement. I do know of it because I think the city of Atlanta started a few years ago, and a few other counties have started adopting since. But I do know that has something, it is done through code enforcement.
Yes, my question is, what is the appeal process for, to dispute property tax assessment, and how long does it take?
Forever. No. So, yes, sir, good question. So once that 45-day window, so when we send a notice of assessments out, and just to kind of give you an idea, this past year, we sent them out on April 26th, and you had till the 10th of June. So during that time, you come in, you can actually file it online. Our website has a link. You can click on it and file your appeal. You can mail it in, fax it in, or come into our office and fill it out. If you mail it in, it has to be postmarked by the U.S. Postal Service by the deadline date. So if they postmark it a day late, it is actually, and just understand this 45-day window is governed by law. So when we open it 45 days later, no matter what happens in your life, that 45-day window closes. We have a lot of people that come in on the 11th and 12th, and different things in life have happened. The law looks at it that you had the other 44 days before that to do something before that last day you missed. So, but once you do that, there's a couple different options. You can appeal it to the Board of Equalization, which is standard for most residential properties. You also have an arbitrator. You can go straight to Superior Court, different things like that. When you're filling out the appeal form will also have your reasoning why you're wanting to file an appeal. It can be something as taxability, value. There's 6 different options, and I'm trying to think of them all right on top of my head. But just understand, taxability is not that you don't like your taxes. Every property in the state of Georgia, the first part of 48.5 states that all property is taxable unless there is an exception, which is an exemption. So I always tell people taxation is the norm. Exemption is the exception. And so, but once you fill that out, as soon as that day, if our staff, depending on what's going on, it looks over that appeal and tries to get with you or look over what they can and can't do and make that known, they have the option of settling it right then and there with a simple value agreement. There is what we call a change of value letter, a 30-day letter. If we decide to do that, we'll send another one of these back out. It'll have 30 days instead of 45 with a different value, because we've looked at something and whatever you've put on there or something that the appraisers found can make a change in that value. And you have 30 days to reappeal that if you still don't agree. Then, like I said, the Board of Equalization is a 3-panel member of citizens. It's done through the Clerk of Superior Court. You would go and present your side, the county presents their side, and they make a finding. The value agreements, the Board of Equalization decisions, things like that have what it's called, we call it 299C. It's a lock that for that year and 2 consecutive years after, it can't go any higher unless there are significant changes to the property during that time, or you reappeal. Because the law now states that if you reappeal during that 3 years, you actually forfeit the remaining years of whatever lock, and the board has the right to take it at current year value. So that's been a recent change in the last couple of years. But as far as the overall time it could take, just depending on when it comes in and how many appeals. We had a little over 8,000 appeals this year. So we're still in the middle of having Board of Equalization hearings, probably for about another month or so before we get all those finished for the year. So, it could take as little as 24 hours, but, depending on if it gets certified to the board and their schedule, at that point it's in theirs. It could take 4 or 5, a couple months to schedule there. But you can always, even if it gets certified to the board, reach out to your appraiser, if the staff member, and it's listed on your notice every year who your staff contact is, and they can try to let you know why they can or can't do something and make decisions from there. At the end of the day, I always tell everybody, you're the homeowner. It's your final decision on what you want to do. We can only present the evidence we have based on that. Whether you want to agree with what the appraiser said and kind of end the appeal at that point with whatever, whether it be a withdrawal or a value agreement, or if you want to take it to the board and have them do it. You actually can't appeal the board's decision after that and take it to Superior Court. There are costs and everything associated at that point, but most of them get settled in a month or two, just depending on the time of year. But like I said, those that are certified to the board, now we're waiting on calendars, and so it will take a little while to get all this completed. Is that a long enough short answer? Yes, sir.
All right, so for me, thank you. First of all, thank you for the information on how everything, the properties are actually assessed. That was very helpful. I guess for me is the fact that not a lot of people are aware of that. So my question is, how often are you out in the community to inform the people of how properties are actually assessed? That way, when it comes down to receiving the notices, they're not shocked.
Well, they're still going to be shocked.
Angry.
They're still going to be. They're still going to be.
Probably less,
I understand.
So, how often and what will be the process of having you be a speaker at another entity or another event?
At any point, first of all, that last part, reach out to me. I make myself available, as much as I can. I don't look at myself as far as having too busy of a schedule that I can't stop for however long. As far as how many I do, it really just depends on request. I speak at HOA meetings. Sometimes I have HOAs request. Sometimes commissioners at some of their little monthly meetings will request different things like that. As some of this new stuff is coming out, you'll probably see my face a little bit more at other different functions. As far as I'm probably looking at podcasts or any other thing getting together, because I want this information out there. It's going to be confusing. Don't know why it was designed to be confusing, and it shouldn't, but I know it's going to be, and my office is gearing up for being ready for that. But at the same time, I need everyone to understand that Clayton County didn't make that change. This was voted on at the state level, and we just have to adhere to that state law. But we will try our best to, put as much information out there going before, and, especially be ready for once those notices go out and the confusion really does, because, I can sit here and talk to everybody and I'm probably going to reach 5%, 10%. And so it's going to come, and that's fine. And I'll speak after, I'll speak during, and all that, just whenever I need to. I don't mind.
Any others? Some great questions, great conversation. Anything else from online?
No, something we're good. Are you okay?
I am fantastic. I'm still kind of blown away and still have that little furrow here, but that may last for a little while.
That will last.
Right. But yes, thank you. Thank you again, Emmett, for
Yes, sir.
joining us today and sharing some information that I know is valuable to our community. And we look forward again to seeing you all at the next episode of Coffee with the Librarian. And I'm gonna go see who's screaming back there, story time. Have a fantastic day, and again, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.